last time you played these guys, your defense was able to be really disruptive. But it seems like over the last few weeks they've been playing a lot better with more force. What are the challenges for your defense to try to be disruptive again tonight?
Yeah, they're a challenge because they've got aggressive guard play. Those guys can score, and they've got good handle. So you can't just like take the ball from them. And then they've got shooters that are on the move, specifically Markkanen, who's a problem when he's given space on the perimeter and able to line up shots. He's a very accurate jump shooter, so they're a challenge on that end of the floor, and we're going to need to be an aggressive, physical team in order to disrupt their team rhythm.
This season, you guys have quite a few guys that are starting to defend better with their body and not using their hands and arms as much. Is that something that you guys emphasize over the off season, or is that just them?
Not an emphasis in the off season. I'm pretty sure none of these guys are doing anything defensively from like June to September. But in season, it's an emphasis. I think understanding what plays the refs are going to put air in the whistle on. And if a player's driving and they gather the ball and you're reaching in that situation, those are the plays that typically they're going to get, and where they don't have a high threshold for physicality. So it's understanding that and not putting yourself in a tough situation or putting the referee in a situation where it's an easy call.
Mark, you're not only number one defensive, pick and roll defense, isolated when I run. It's not that you're number one; it's you're like outside the standard deviation of where a team should be. How are you doing this? What is allowing you to not only just be better than everyone else, but monumentally better than everyone else?
It's halfway through the season, so we got a long way to go. But I would say it's a combination of things. But the main thing is defensive personnel. We just have there's a compounding effect to having this many guys that are high impact defensive players. So you can come down on an initial action, and against most of our lineups, the guy on the point of attack is a very good defender, the guy in the pick and roll is a very good defender, and then the guys behind it in the help are very good defenders. Now you're going to force a perimeter pass, you're going to put help defenders in closeouts, and you get like Alex Caruso closing out, and you're not sacrificing the point of attack because you got like Case and Wallace at the point of attack. And so that's a huge thing. There's just a number of possessions that you watch where it's like there's just not a lot of holes out there, and it's not just like a talent thing. They're like highly committed to it. They understand the value of the invisible things in the game, especially on the defensive end of the floor, and they need to be sold on that. We're not coming in and begging them to care about defense every day. They care about defense, and so when you've got that kind of talent and impact and skill with that kind of like will and commitment level, that's I think what's had a lot to do with it at this point.
What are the invisible things?
I mean, these visible things are like keeping your hands out on a gather, being early to your spots, communicating coverages early, helping your teammate when you sense trouble, blocking out. You might not get the rebound, but you're hitting somebody that's crashing, having your hand up early on Markkanen, understanding that closing to Markkanen is different than closing to somebody who doesn't shoot it that well. And again, these guys have used these experiences to improve at all those things, and they're committed to them. And then they're also really, really good defenders, and I think that's the reason we've been, to this point in the season where we are.
Mark, you've talked about Jay Will's pick and roll defense a little bit, but this season he's had 62 possessions going out to the ball handler, and he's in the 95th percentile defensively doing that. How have you seen him improve specifically switching on to a guard?
He's not doing a lot of switching, but he is up there higher. One of the things we've, really worked with him on, and he's done a great job, is, we're traditionally a drop team in our base coverage. When you've got guys like Hartenstein and Chet, that's a very efficient decision systematically because of those guys' ability to rim protect. Jay Will's rim protection isn't as traditional as them. He's not the shot blocker, he's not the shot deterrer, he doesn't have the same length. And so his strengths are different strengths. He's a great help defender because of the charges and the early help. He's a great communicator, and he's really, really smart. And so what he's done is he's learned how to change his depth as a pick and roll defender based on who's got the ball, where they have the ball, and how much time's on the shot clock. And if you watch him in a game, at the point of a pick and roll, he's at a different depth almost every time, and that's him using unbelievable critical thinking and leveraging his mind, because he's an incredibly smart player. And what that's done is it's kept him out of some of the situations that expose some of his vulnerabilities as a player, which is really all you're trying to do with any player. Every player has strengths and every player has vulnerabilities, and you're trying to help them find a game that leverages their strengths for the team and limits their vulnerabilities. And his improvement in the pick and roll game has been a very subtle but great developmental mark for him and for the program. He's done a great job, compared to his first year.
I was just curious, obviously Alex Dukas was able to get some minutes the other night against Brooklyn. What have you learned about him, just seeing his minutes with the Blue and obviously time with you guys in practice?
Yeah, he's been hurt, so trying to withhold judgment, too early, because, he hasn't played a ton. I like his fearlessness, and I also like his floor game. He's a pretty complete player. He had that pocket pass. I forget we were on the road, but he threw a hell of a pass. With 2 on the ball, he shoots it freely. He kind of goes in the game and he's like talking and he's enthusiastic, and it really doesn't matter if he hasn't played in a week. He goes in there ready to play. He loves being a part of the team. So he's got like a great spirit. He's got great competitiveness. I think he's pretty tough. I think he's pretty fearless. And he did a great job last game going in there and just ripping those shots, despite the fact that he didn't play very much before that.
Mark, we talked earlier in the season about shooting numbers being down, some of the efficiency of you kind of attributed that to regression being from like certain guys' personal developments. I mean, when you look at Joe, his numbers are up, Casey, his numbers are up. Is it too early to say that some of those guys have kind of figured out their own personal thing they were dealing with, they were handling to this point, and have kind of dug themselves out of that progression?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to oversimplify things because there's so many different factors. I think there's a variance element to it. I mean, they were missing shots earlier in the season that they made at a higher clip a year ago, and that you would expect them to make at a higher clip. Then they were also, I think, pushing the boundaries of their games, which we've encouraged them to do. And I thought that might have had something to do with it, as I've told you guys, through the season. So I'm not sure exactly, why it might have been lower earlier and why it might be ticking up now. But there was always a belief that we had that it was going to come back around. I mean, we didn't think Casey Wallace was going to shoot 25% from 3. We didn't think Isaiah was going to shoot 32%. That's just not who those guys have been. And so some of it's just like encouraging them to stay very consistent with the diet of shots so that they're not reacting to the outcomes of the shots. That's the worst thing you can do in those situations, is start shooting more or less based on whether or not the ball's going in. Just shoot your shots and shoot them consistently and shoot them confidently, and we're going to ride with those guys if they do that.
And I know you always talk about coming to the year without expectations for anyone, but when Sam talked in the summer, he was talking about Kaysen and Chet as potential playmakers coming into this year. As you put Kaysen on the ball more, I don't know your definition of a playmaker, but what was your sort of vision for Kaysen just as a playmaker coming into this year, and how is he maybe mirrored that, reflected that?
The way I look at it is, they tell you what they're ready for with what they do on the court, and so he showed the capacity at times last year as a secondary playmaker. Kaysen did. That was like, okay, and even before he came here, his college film, he showed the ability, especially as a finisher, to get in there and do some things. And so you always kind of had in the back of your mind that he's had that before. And then you put him in some situations and see how he does. And inevitably, every player bumps into a wall at some point. You could have Kaysen shoot every ball tonight, and at a certain point that'll have diminishing returns because there's 5 guys out there, and for all the reasons that you'd already know. And so you figure out where the edge of their growth curve is, and you put them right there, and so that's different for every player. But I don't necessarily come in predicting that. I come in very open and let the team tell me, not literally, but the play tell us what we should be investing in, tell us where we're hitting some some plateaus, tell us where we should be doing a little bit more, pushing a little bit more, and just try to listen to the team, you know, and he's done a nice job with his decision making, with his creation, and that's why he's gotten a little more.
Last thing, I know these are like terms tossed around. It's not like facilitator, playmaker, passer somewhere in there. Like, what is your, for reference, what is your definition of playmaking?
I think every possession comes down to advantages, you know, and so you try to create an advantage, and then you try to capitalize on that advantage or maintain the advantage. And so, how a playmaker fits into that, you could have people that create the advantage. Obviously, Shai, Dub, those guys are like the ones that would stand out as advantage creators. Like when they are at the initial point of attack, they will get you an advantage one way or the other. And then the other guys that the ball comes out to, it's about finishing the play. So if they're open to shoot, they shoot. If they're open on a cut, they lay the ball in. If they're open on a roll, they dunk it. Or they maintain the advantage. So like you create the advantage, they blitz Shai, you throw to Jay Will in the pocket. He's not open for a shot or a dunk. He throws it to the next guy. That guy either needs to finish the play or maintain the advantage. And there's playmaking elements in every part of that play, and we're just trying to teach our guys, again, how to leverage their strengths in those situations, and we're trying to put them in situations where their strengths can come to the surface. But that's how I see